Welcome to how to make your Krafty Max Original mini art piece. This is what you'll be making. They're on small mat boards that have already been made. You can get them from Hobby Lobby, Joann's, Michael's, just about anywhere. Your kit actually has one in it, so it's provided, so you don't need to worry about it. But what we're going to do is we're going to do the beadwork first, and then we'll finish by gluing it on. Everything in your kit is provided except for scissors and glue. There are a few other items that I will talk about that are something that you don't necessarily have to have, but are sometimes very nice to have. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to talk about the difference between Delica beads, which are seed beads, and traditional seed beads. The best way I can describe it is that a regular seed bead looks like a donut, and everybody can imagine what a donut looks like, all rounded in the center and on the outside. They also have small holes. Delicas look like small tubes of like a straw that's been cut uniformly. It's got a very large hole. They're uniform in size, and all of seed beads, for the most part, are glass. There are a few that are wood and some that are metal, but most of them that are produced are glass. One of the other things that is really nice about Delicas versus, say, Toho or some of the other beads that are similar is that Delica is what's called a color fast, meaning that their entire bath of the beads is made with the color. And so generally, unless it's an additional finish like a metallic finish or something, they don't wear the color off. I have used these beads for over 30 years in my projects. They are very good beads, and most of the time you don't have to worry about what's called culling, meaning when you get the actual tube you don't have to worry about taking out a whole bunch of broken or ones that have been crushed or anything. They're usually pretty well to be used. Now when you get them, you'll get them in a small bag for each color, and each one will be labeled with the number that goes to the chart, and we'll go over that in a moment. I actually use a different type of storage. It's a new storage. It's just been out on the market for a few years, mainly because I have so many colors, and also because for me it's a way to see how much I have in a very quick and easy process. So if you see these online, this is a single tube of Delicas. This is 2 tubes. This is 3.5 to 4, and this will hold up to 6 tubes. So it just depends on what you want and how you'd like to store it. So one of the things that you will get is a bead mat, and each one of the kits will be provided a bead mat. Now you often don't need to do anything to this mat. There are some optional things that you can do. One is Scotch tape. If you're working, especially say at your kitchen table where your mat's going to slip around and move, you'll want to actually Scotch tape your mat down on either side, and sometimes on the top to bottom, depending on how much it's going to move. Because here's the thing, when you put these little tiny beads, which are 11 beads per inch, down on the mat, and you move the mat, the beads spill. Now these are special mats. They actually have a core inside of them. They're 2 pieces of like faux felt and a core, which stops the beads from bouncing. As you can see, my actual work surface is underneath, and I'm sorry it's a mess, but it is a work surface. Okay, so you're actually going to get the pattern in your kit, and it's going to look like this. The first page tells you what number and what chart placement it is going to be for the pattern. Then there's an actual layout of the design that you're going to do. Now this is a pretty small design, so you can see the actual numbers in the design. If you do a big piece, often you can't actually see which color is number 1, number 2, and so you sometimes have to refer back to your pattern when you look up at the top. It also will tell you how many beads of each color you will need, so that you know if you have enough or if you need to order more or use a different color. None of the colors is set in stone. It is all your choice. For instance, I use black on all the backgrounds of my kit. You can change this black to a white or to a yellow, however you'd like to do it. The next page of the kit, of the chart, is the word chart. I will teach you what these all mean, but the first one is row 1 and 2. Then 3, 4, and all the way down. Now it does say left and right. However, I'm going to teach you that those really don't matter if you use the design that I use and the way that I bead. I do, however, break everything apart in rows of 5. For one, it's a great way to photograph my progression for my videos online. The other side of it is that when you're pulling rows, you don't want to pull out 15, 20, 30 rows at a time, because if you spill them or you get lost or you've made a mistake, now you have a ton of beads to go back through. So until you become very experienced, I recommend only doing 5 rows. Now if you start, I usually start with 1, 2, and 3 as my first set of rows. That is your foundation. After that's 5 rows. So I take a moment and I actually go down in every 8 and every 3 on the pattern. I actually line through it, and it'll be easier once you do this. It takes a moment to do, and then you don't have to come back and do it, and it gives you a starting and stopping place. So just go through the whole pattern and line them out. Now, again, corresponding to the chart, on this chart we can actually see, so it says number 1 is number 10, which is here. And again, when you receive your little envelopes, it'll have a number 1 on it, so you know what placement to put it. You will also receive a small scoop. This one comes free with your kit. This is the one that I prefer. However, you would have to go to Joann's, Michael's. I think even some Walmarts carry them. They're very nice for seed beads. They have a great scoop with a little angle, kind of like a dustpan, and tweezers on the other end. So this is number 1. We're going to make a pile of number 1 beads. Okay, we look back up on our chart, and number 2 is the dark area of the flower. On this one, we're going to use this bead for the dark area, so this will go in a pile for number 2. Again, just like not pulling too many rows, you don't want to put too many beads out, because what might happen is this spill all over. It's always better to add more beads as you go than to have 400 or 500 beads out and your chart or your bead mat get knocked or spill. Number 3, if we look down on the chart, is for the laugh. I'm going to do this color for the L, for the laugh. And so we only want a few of these. Okay. Number 4, if we look on the chart, is the inside of the flower. So I'm going to use this one. And again, these bead boxes are my preferred choice, but this is not necessarily how you have to do them. Number 5, if you look down on the chart, is the live. I'm actually going to do the green as my number 5. So a small, and if you spill any, just kind of, if you're using the other scoop, you just kind of separate them out. You try not to put too many of the same colors next to each other if you can, and that's where the masking tape can come into handy as well. You can, so that you don't have to permanently mark on them, put a piece of masking tape above each color or below each color with the number 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That sometimes helps you keep things in place. So we're at 5. Our next one is 6. So if we look on our chart, our number 6 is the love. We're going to use this blue. And the number 7 is the center of the flower. So we have all 7 colors out. If you look across the top, it says number 1 is 10, which I know is black. Number 2, chart number 3, you're going to need 165, 4, and this is the DB color. This is the actual Delica color number. Okay, the next thing to do is to thread our needle. Sounds like a simple thing, but unless you have experience threading very small needles, it does make a difference. Now the line that I'm sending with you and that I use most common is called Fire Line. I tend to like the 6-pound. This was originally a fishing line that the beaders found and fell in love with. Some of the best things about it is that it does not yellow, it does not stretch, it's also water resistant. Again, that's great for fishing. It's also great for beading, because if somebody's wearing, say, a bracelet and they wash their hands, they don't have to worry as much about them. Of course, you still want to be very careful. But you're going to each get several strands of Fire Line. I've done a short one so that you can see my hands a little easier. What you want to do is take your Fire Line and squish it in between your teeth. And hopefully you can see it makes a very small flat area on the end. That's what you're going to need to do your needle with. Some people will still have a lot of problems threading their needle. I will tell you, you can try a needle threader. It may or may not work. The reason is because the eye of the needle is so small that oftentimes you can't pull back through the threader and the two strands. So again, squishing them on the end is a really good way to do it. Some people do use their fingernails instead of their teeth. However, it doesn't usually work as well because you also have a soft of your finger. So what I generally do is then place my instructions either to my right or my left, depending on who is doing them. Most people are right-handed, so their dominant eye comes to their right. Okay, it's easier to look down the rows if you're looking back and forth. I have found that some people are better to do it on the left because while they're pulling the beads with their right hand, they can actually use the left hand to run along and see which beads that they're actually pulling. I'm gonna move a little bit out of the way there. Okay, I also recommend that you fold your chart. Seems like such a small thing, but when you're looking over to find your place, looking through the entire chart is very hard to find where you're at versus only a half a page. So it does actually make a big difference. Okay, now we're going to start pulling our beads. The first row is going to be, if you can, hopefully I'm in the video here, sorry about that. The first row is going to be 21 number ones. Actually, oh, there we go. It's going to be 21 number ones. So you can count them singly or separate, however you'd like to. 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14, 16, 18, 20, 21. 5 number threes. 1, 2, 3. So we're going to do 5 of these. And we're going to actually make a row of the beads straight across, kind of like the actual row that's on the paper. The next is going to be 10. So 2, 4, 6, 8, 10. That is our first and second row, which I will explain in a moment. The next row is 4 ones, 2 threes, and 12 ones. Okay, you always want to keep them separate, so again, if you bounce or if something knocks on your tray or on your bead mat, they don't move together. Okay, we are also doing what's called even count. There is a difference between even and odd count peyote. The biggest difference is that in even count, every single row you do will have the same even number. In this instance, we're doing 18 per row. So every row, no matter what combination, will have 18. In an odd count, it would have 18 and 17. And you have to do a very unique turn on the corner, which makes both ends end up with an up, which again, you'll understand in just a moment. It's a little bit harder of a stitch, and I don't like to start that way. It's also much harder to find patterns in odd count peyote than it is in even count peyote. Even is much more standard, and it's much easier, especially for the beginner. Okay, now we're going to start. I usually wrap around my non-dominant hand what will be called the dead tail. You also have a working tail, which is the one that's off the needle. I wrap it 2 or 3 times around my pinky, not enough to cut off the circulation, but enough so that when I pull on it, it doesn't slide off my finger. The reason for this is that after the first row, you're done with holding the thread, and it becomes what's called an anchor, and it makes it easier for the first few rows to hold onto your work. So once you've got it set up, you're going to thread on, always working from left to right. Again, doesn't really matter what side this says on the chart, because we're going to be turning our work. So we're going to just add on all the beads in row 1 and 2. We are also doing what's called 2-drop peyote, meaning we will always be, except for this very first row, picking up 2 beads per stitch. There is single drop peyote, there is 3-drop, 4-drop, 5-drop, as many as you want to do, and basically that means how many beads you're picking up per stitch. Okay, so we've now added our first and second row onto the needle, and if you see on the thread, I can actually pull a little bit of tension from my pinky and it's not slipping. That's very important. Some people do use stop beads. I do not, and I don't teach it that way because in another row you won't need it at all. All right, so you're going to take your needle, and again working from left to right, you're going to take 2 beads and pick them up. You're going to skip the first 2 beads and go through the next 2 beads.